Hi, I'm Jacob, and let's talk about imagination. Kids have no shortage of it, and why would they? A lot of them are yet to be brought down by the crushing monotony of daily life. Oh God, someone save me. Point being, we were all kids once. And we all liked to play pretend, whether we were secret agents, or pirates, or secret agents with ranks, or ninjas, or secret agents with our own treehouse headquarters. Clearly, secret agents were the best option here. Enter Codename Kids Next Door. If you've never seen it, Codename Kids Next Door was about a group of kids who were field agents in their organization's war against the tyranny of adults. That organization, of course, being the Kids Next Door. The series focused mainly on the operatives of Sector V: Nigel, Hoagie, Kooky, Wallaby, and Abby. But these 5 characters were much more commonly referred to by their assigned numbers, which were 1 through 5 respectively. Throughout the series, the Kids Next Door got into some pretty wild stuff. Even the scale of the organization itself is enough to make people wonder things. It's almost to the point where the KND organization couldn't be real, could it? This brings us to our question. What if Codename Kids Next Door is just a very elaborate game of pretend and we're just seeing the series through the kids' eyes? So here's the thing with the Kids Next Door organization. It's absolutely massive. Along with Sector V's treehouse, there's also the moon base, the Arctic base and prison, and countless expansions all over the world. With a scale like this, a staff so ridiculously huge, and an ongoing war against adult tyranny, how is this organization kept a secret from adults? Often when a non-supervillain adult sees what the KND are up to, they're pretty nonchalant in their reaction. Most notably, Number One's decommissioned father. These reactions, while played for comedy, would actually be pretty realistic if it was just reacting to their kids playing. Also, did you notice the word I used earlier? Decommissioned? For those unaware, every KND operative is scheduled for decommissioning when they turn 13, since they're no longer kids. This process consists of wiping the operative's memory via plungers. So what would make more sense? That these memories are literally wiped away? Or that these kids just grew up and stopped wanting to be part of the game? While it's true that some people refuse decommission or defect to another organization like the Teens Next Door or the Teen Ninjas, they could just be older kids who still want to have fun and play with the kids anyway. Though a big part of me does wish it's the memory loss thing, because then that means any of us could be KND operatives, and that would be super cool. Furthermore, if this wasn't just a game the kids were playing, how is it that they're constantly surviving massive explosions? What about the kids operating motor vehicles? What about the base on the actual moon? Okay, yes, they're specially trained field agents, that's all well and good, but what about Grandma Stuff'em's sentient food army? What about the insane amount of collateral damage the kids next door leave in their wake? There's just a lot of stuff that would be weird if it was all real. Speaking of collateral damage, what's being used to cause all that damage? Why, a plethora of single-use weapons and gadgets, of course. The 2x4 technology arsenal of the kids next door is almost as big as the organization itself. While a lot of these gadgets are used multiple times, a good deal of them are only ever used once and then never again. And these gadgets always seem to be perfect for whatever situation they're in. It's almost as if they're making up these gadgets as they go along. It's kind of like that really annoying kid you knew and you'd be having sword fights with him and he'd be like, "Oh no, I have a force field up." Eric. When it comes to less extravagant 2x4 gadgets, however, like armor, we can find a lot of everyday items being used. Things like potato mashers or zippers forming control panels, or a colander serving as a helmet. An armor choice whose usefulness I would strongly question considering it's full of holes. One other thing to consider with the KND is who exactly they fight. A large part of their rogues gallery can easily be related with something kids don't like. Grandma Stuff'em and healthy food, Mr. Boss and authority or corporations, Nightbrace and the dentist, Father and I don't know, fire. And a lot of the villains built around something that kids like are openly malicious. For instance, Sticky Beard or the Ice Cream Men are always trying to deprive the kids of candy or ice cream, respectively. It's to the point where the villains they face could just be exaggerations as to how they perceive adults. And they're just playing this game to blow off some frustration. It's cathartic. And finally, this point is admittedly kinda silly, but I have to say something or I'm gonna go crazy. The staple of one of the most recurring villains, the delightful children from down the lane, is that they speak in unison. Do you know how difficult that is to improvise with a group of people? Granted, it's a bit easier with a group of people that you know well, but it's still really hard. I encourage you to try, you'll see. I have a sneaking suspicion that what they say could be prepared lines. That's just something that bothers me about them. It's just unsettling. And again, I guess that's kind of the point. We could go on and on about how everything in Codename Kids Next Door seems to be an elaborate fantasy, but there's still one thing that bothers me in all of this. So a lot of the villains that the kids next door face are adults. If this whole show is just kids pretending, does that mean that the adult villains in the show are just playing along with the kids? Because if that were the case, one, I don't know how anybody in that world would get any work done, and two, I really wish I lived in that neighborhood because that would be so cool. Though regarding this, one interesting thing to think about is that in Operation Zero, Number One's dad, real name Monty, is credited with being Number Zero and by finding the Book of the KND, starting the 7th age of the kids next door. But the Book of KND could be more of a symbolic item, passed down through Number One's family. Monty may have told his son about how he and his friends used to play when they were kids, inspiring his son to bring the KND back with his friends. At which point, his son Nigel became Number One, Sector V was born, and everyone just kinda ran with it until the exploits of the KND were known by every kid. And somewhere in this timeline, Monty finally gave Nigel the Book of KND. I mean, it makes sense considering the book encourages the owner to write their story, which could mean that Monty gave it to his son to continue the tradition. Now, I know that some of you are in the comments right now to remind us that Nigel didn't actually start Sector V. The show always told us that Number 5 recruited Number 1. While the show does tell us that doesn't necessarily mean that's what happened in real life. It could just be an in-game piece of lore to explain why an older kid like Number 5 doesn't outrank Number 1. It's like D&D, but with secret agents. That sounds kind of awesome, actually. To add to this point of family, one of the main villains in the series is Father, who we learn in Operation Zero is actually Monty's brother and Nigel's uncle. If both Number One's dad and uncle are playing along to their game, I think they just won for coolest family in the history of ever, right? There's one last piece of evidence though, and while we've already talked about it before, it could just as easily be used as a point against the theory. That being the sheer scale of the KND organization. How could so many kids be involved? Well, one argument could be that the ever-growing cast of Codename Kids Next Door was actually a result of some kids hearing about these other kids playing the coolest game ever. Naturally, they'd all want to be included, right? It would explain why the moon base and the further expansions weren't introduced until later in the show. It also explains why our main 5 operatives, for the most part, don't hold the highest seats in the KND organization, despite holding the numbers 1 through 5. In most ranking systems I know, those numbers would indicate pretty high status. While it's true that Number 1's last name is Uno, that doesn't explain why numbers 2 through 5 have those numbers. Unless, in the beginning, they were the only ones playing this game. But because of the influx of kids wanting in on the best LARPing experience ever, positions had to be invented to accommodate everyone. And kids love to one-up each other when it comes to rank. Hence, higher numbers and higher positions of authority. There's always a big problem when it comes to it's all in their head theories. As we've just seen, you can explain away basically anything with that logic. But when it comes to it's all in their head theories, I think this is one of the better ones because it actually adds a lot of depth to the show. Since the KND are so against adult tyranny, they see adults as openly malicious. It would also mean that the show does a fantastic job of capturing childhood imagination even if you didn't play as secret agents. But we all did, so like, why are you kidding yourself? So because of this, I'm going to rate the conspiracy of Codename Kids Next Door actually being an elaborate game of pretend 4.5 rainbow monkeys out of 5. But that's just me. What do you think? Is Codename Kids Next Door just an elaborate game of pretend? Who's your favorite number from the show? And how badly do you want to see a Galactic Kids Next Door series? My answer's a lot. Be sure to drop a comment and let us know. And let us know if you have any theories you'd like us to take a look at in the future. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Channel Frederator for more episodes of Cartoon Conspiracy.